Well, Jonathan, I just want to thank our listeners that get us these questions, and sometimes we can get to them, sometimes we can't, but this is one we get commonly in our business. And I got John from Ozark says, I'm looking at buying my neighbor's 40 acres. Should I have it surveyed before I buy it? I'll let you answer.
Okay, well, that is a great question, John. Thanks. And the answer is it depends, and it depends on a whole lot of factors as to what you do. The first thing I'm going to do is, if I'm looking at it personally or if I'm looking at it for a client, I'm going to pull up the maps on it, and I'm going to see what it looks like and what shape it is and what's around it, because that a lot of times it will determine if it joins the Talladega National Forest, if it joins a river or a creek. There may be some natural boundaries or governmental boundaries that you can't do anything about. So it's really not going to do anything to establish a boundary line. And there really are a couple of reasons why you have a survey. One is you have a survey to establish boundary lines or to determine where they are, or also to figure out the quantity of acres that you're actually buying. That's one is to know where your lines are. The other is to figure out what you're buying. So I'm also going to pull a deed. And why would you pull a deed to figure out if you need a survey?
Well, you want to make sure that again, it's just like you said, there's so many different types of 40 acres. We were late when Alabama not being one of the original 13 colonies, we were laid out on the geodetic grid, the geodetic survey, and everything's laid out in grids and squares, and so many tracts are relatively easy to understand.
Right.
So there's a good chance that a 40 could be a quarter of a quarter section.
Right.
In the description, and you can just look at it. And many times you buy those kind of tracts on survey because you look at them and you're like, well, that's really close to 40 acres. The lines are painted. You walk around the property. There doesn't seem to be any obvious encroachments, and anything that would be relatively minor. And you may make the decision, instead of spending the money on the survey, that you're fine whether it's actually 38 acres or 42 acres.
Right.
You're buying a quarter of a quarter section, and you're fine with that. And in fact, that's one place from a risk management standpoint in our business is we want to make sure that people understand right from the beginning that you're buying this as a tract per a legal description, and that acreage is just an estimate. You're buying the tract, or you're going to buy it on a per acre basis based on a survey. You need to go one way or the other. The worst thing that could happen is if you agree upon a price and your neighbor thinks that you're buying it as a quarter of a quarter section, and through the process, y'all agree, let's say $80,000, and through the process you say, well, I'm going to have a survey done. It surveys out to be 38 acres, and you're like, whoa, I'm getting less land. I need it, and that can create a dispute. So it needs to be a per acre purchase on the front end with everybody agreeing, say $2,000 an acre based on a new survey, or it needs to be lump sum based on the legal description. That way there's no confusion.
Yeah, and I think that's great. And so you're going to have a boundary survey done. There are several different types of surveys that you can have done. The one that most people typically think about is that you go in and you have the corners put in and then the lines are painted. And that's the most expensive kind of survey. Well, actually that's kind of the middle of the road, but that is a much more expensive survey than just establishing where the corners are.
And then in between would be some flagging in between.
Yeah, so you would want to do that, but typically just to establish a line, I know in my area, surveyors are typically 45 to 60 cents per linear foot. I mean, that's the quote they give me. I got one yesterday. And so you're just going to figure that out, and it will vary depending on who the surveyor is and the topography and all those kinds of things. But that gives you an idea. So the answer is, would you have a survey done? And it just depends. So you need to contact somebody like us with Southeastern Land Group. And really, there are two issues when you have a survey done. One, the legal description, which the surveyor is going to give you, that establishes it where it is on paper. And then the surveyor actually goes out there and shows you where it is on the surface of the earth. And those two things should match up. They don't always match up.
Right, and a lot of our properties are sold without surveys, and people just make an educated decision. They make an educated decision. I see what it is. It's there on the ground. They have possession. I'm comfortable with that. I don't want to spend the money on the survey. You have your eyes wide open. And we can, places, the more complicated the configuration, the more moving parts, the more likely it is that we would recommend a survey.
Yeah,
the simpler a tract is to understand, generally, but ultimately it would be, John, it'd be your decision, and I think that's a great question. And
yeah, that is a great question. The one thing I would say is if you're going to borrow money on a property, and the lender has any concerns, the lender is probably going to require a survey.
Sometimes they do, and then
Yeah, I'm saying
sometimes they do,
if
sometimes
there's
they
a
don't.
discrepancy,
Right.
if there's a discrepancy that they feel like it, and if they don't require one, you can generally feel good about it because they're putting their money on the
There you
line.
go.
So y'all, thank you for those questions. Please keep sending them to us at info@thelandshow.com. Dave and I love to get those, and John, we appreciate this question. And y'all stay with us. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back for more of The Land Show with Dave and Johnny.